Hello, what's up? It's Silly City, and we're back with Hawaii Behind the Records episode number 23. And this week we're gonna look at the drum and bass beat. Drum bass is similar to jungle music, but you have like tighter drums, the production is more polished, and you have a wider emotional range. Let's look into the drums, and we start with the tempo, the BPMs. And here you have, like in most styles, just like the range from 170 to 175 BPMs. You also have like the halftime beat, that's more like 80 to 95 BPMs, and you have like the double time feel there. The drums are simple two-step drums or like breakbeat drums, and you create the groove with the space and syncopation within the drums. Also here, like the breakbeat is the foundation, but it's cleaner and it's also tighter than in jungle. In drum bass music, you can also add a kick to the break beat. Those can be in varied patterns. It can be just like straight 4 on the floor beat. It can be more like halftime. It can also have syncopation. And another thing you can do is just like high pass filter the kick and layer it together with the snare. The snare in drum bass music can hit on the 2 and the 4. It can also just hit on the 3 if you do more like the halftime beat style. And you can also layer the snares. In drum bass music, you also use some break beats. They are similar to the jungle style break beats. Those can be like the Amen break, the Think break, or like the Apache break. And you can also like chop them, resample them, and reprocess the break beats. Like I already mentioned, in drum and bass you can use like one-shot drums and just like layer them together with the breakbeat to add some additional groove. The hi-hats in drum and bass music are in 16 patterns. You should also high-pass filter them so they are cleaner. Then it's also important to consider that the hi-hats are the defining thing for the pace in drum and bass music, and you can also like add a lot of shuffle to add some groove in the hi-hats. Another thing you can do is like just automate the velocity of the hats, so you have a little bit more groove in that, and you can also use some ghost hat fills. Another thing you can do in drum and bass music to keep the groove alive is just to add some ghost hits or drum fills every 8 bars. So that's already it with the drums and like the arrangement. Let's look into some beats and then we're gonna be back for the instruments. Alright, let's look into some basic beats, and here as last week it's just a basic arrangement. I think this time it's the Think break, so yeah, it's just like a snare and a kick, and like of course this is just like recreated and also like lacks a little bit of swing and everything, but this was just for me as an initial step, so let's look into the next beat already. Alright, as with last week with the jungle beats, I just like played a little bit around with like a drum kit or like tried to resample some of the initial breaks. Then also like bought a guitar recently, so I just tried to play a little bit with that in, and yeah, it wasn't the vibe I was looking for, and that's definitely also a reason why I needed to look into a little bit more theory. And yeah, that's also I already teased a little bit last week. Last week we focused more on the drums, and before going into the theory about the instruments and the basses, I'm gonna show you the template with like some of the basses and the presets there. Alright, so we're gonna use the same template as in last week's video, but this week we're gonna focus more on the basses. And also here I just tried to recreate some of the basses that I saw in the YouTube videos of Stranger. So he had a lot of like tutorials with jungle and drum and bass beats, and I also tried to recreate some of the basses with Serum, and like yeah, recreate that to have some templates to work with. Also a little side note, I think in an earlier video I said that like Serum 2 didn't really work for like the older MacBooks, but as you can hear, like it works. I think I just wasn't logged in with Splice because I still have like this Serum rent, and yeah, I think if you're not logged in it sounds weird. So all good here, and yeah, you can already hear the first bass. And let's look into Serum, what I did. So I think I started everything with the initial setting, the preset, and then I just used like this basic saw wave and just added this LFO here, and then mapped it to the filter cutoff, and that's basically already like yeah, this basic bass. It already sounds good, and here you see the MIDI, it's just simple. And then from here, like I went on, added a second bass, and this is also like more a sub bass. So let's turn off this first one. So here, yeah, it's just like recreation of a screenshot. I used these wavetables here. I think I also switched them up a little bit. Added this sub here, and then again like a low pass that's together with an LFO. And yeah, here the MIDI, and basically that's it. I think some people already recognize what song this was that I recreated, so yeah. Here we have the third bass that comes in, or like just like a third bass that I tried out. And here you can see again it's just a single sine wave. Here a little bit of a low pass filter again, that's together with an LFO, and the LFO is just like, yeah, straight down, and that creates these kind of noises. Yeah. So let me quickly remove this. So let's go to the next bass. I rearranged them at some point so it's not in a clear order. Here, to be honest, I don't know what I did. I think I just played around a little bit with like this saws. At some point I also just asked ChatGPT how to create like certain sounds. Here instead I used like a band pass, and again LFO. And yeah, I don't know. Listening now, this stuff doesn't really sound that nice, but yeah. And here we have another, like, those are more mids basses for the mid ranges. And yeah, here again, like wavetables, two wavetables. Also here some unison that it sounds a little bit fuller. And also like here a little bit like different tones. So here the seventh semitone is like the harmonic fifth. And then here is a low pass again with like a cutoff. I think I could do the cutoff a bit lower, but let's keep it as it is. And again here a sub. And yeah, I think I didn't mention that before, but like at some point I just added some effects, like most of the time some distortion, compression, and yeah, a little bit of that stuff. So what do we have next? So where are we? Here. So this is like this mid growl bass, and yeah, again a simple like triangle wave, then like a weird sine wave together, then that both into a low pass filter, LFO to the cutoff as always, and yeah, distortion, reverb, classic effects. So let's go to the next bass, this wobble bass, and that sounds like this. Wow, that's where the name wobble comes from. And yeah, also like a simple shape, like the basic shapes, just like one octave apart, band pass filter, and then again an LFO, and yeah, no effects here. And yeah, this is this bass, and let's go to the next wobble bass. And also like how you play the bass, like, or like the MIDI notes you use, it always like affects the sound as well. But yeah, here again like basic sine wave, not sine wave, sorry, saw wave, a lot of unison, low pass filter, and like an LFO, and yeah, that's like basic like, yeah, wobble bass. So before we go to the next, I quickly have to mute this here again, sorry for the mess, but yeah, it is what it is as always. So let's go here. This is like this third wobble bass, and here we just have like what is that, a square wave with like sub bass, low pass filter, and LFO. So you can see it's always like kind of similar, like it's often just a basic shape, low pass filter that's cut off with an LFO. So yeah, let's look at the next. This is like this whoop, as the name already says, like that's also how it sounds. It's a little bit more high, and yeah, here we have a sine wave. I put it 5 semitones below. I don't know really why, I just played around, I think. and then yeah, here an envelope filter, and yeah, that's already basically it. Uh, mm, yeah, I think this LFO is here for this semitone, for like the glide on the note, and I don't know why the filter is off. Yeah, I know why, because you wouldn't hear anything otherwise. But yeah, that's a whoop bass, and here we have a pew bass, so you can already have an idea what it sounds like. So this is just like a simple, again, triangle wave with a LFO that just goes down. That's also here for the semitones, and I think, yeah, here you hear a little bit more the pewiness of this pew sound. Alright, here we have another kind of pew sound. I'm excited as you are, like surprised as you guys of hearing what it sounds like, because I can't remember what I thought of those sounds. And here again, like, yeah, what do we see? Simple, like a square wave, some unison, again an LFO, that's for the semitones going down. Here we have an envelope mode. So basically envelope means it just does it once, and retrig means it does it over again. And yeah, again, you hear the pewness more if we put it a little bit higher on the, yeah, on the sounds. So let's go to the next one, and this is not this whoop, but this one here, another pew sound. And yeah, it might be boring for some people to see all of those, but I'm just gonna go through them. And yeah, again, a simple saw wave with some unison. Then we have an envelope LFO that goes here over the cutoff, and some distortion and delay. And again, let's put it some octaves higher. Yeah, changes how it sounds. So then we have this ZAP one, and yeah, this is again, you can see there's an LFO with like just a short peak, and also like a bandpass with a high resonance. So yeah, that's that, and some unison. And yeah, I don't know, I think I worked a lot of screenshots or just like from ChatGPT inputs, but this gave me a good like idea, okay, what things can I do to make it sound more like the things I want it to sound like. Then in the end I also tried to do some acid beats, like, I don't know, this was just like final playing around, and yeah, I don't know, I'm just gonna show it because like I already went through all of it and it doesn't really change anything, this one or two basses more, and yeah, just for the completeness. So turn this one off, and we have this acid bass here. And as you can see in the MIDI, I always like retrig it. And here you can see, again, it's just like a saw wave. And here I just tried to play with the filters, and it had acid in the name, so I thought it would be fine. And then here, this envelope. And yeah, that's the last bass that I kind of played around with. And of course I have my favorites, you're gonna see them in the following tracks. But yeah, that's just a basic overview. I hope it helped some people or was like entertaining, or yeah, I don't know. Alright, let's look into the instruments, and we're gonna start with the bass. The bass in drum and bass can be like a Reese bass, it can be a sub-sine, it can be a growling bass, it can be a wobble bass, and it can also be just a tight pluck. It's just important that you use a lot of LFO controls and like use a lot of filter modulation to add some movement to the bass. If you look at the sound design of the bass, you can use Serum for that. What is important is that you notch it, like I already mentioned, use a lot of like LFO controls. You can also like distort the bass and resample it and then layer it together. So like in bass house music, you can just use like a sub bass, add a mid growling bass, and also like a high bass for some texture. If you look at the instruments and the melodies, we can see that there are a lot of like liquid elements. You can add some like emotional pads, piano chords, or vocal texture. And if you look at the chords, you can use the minor chords and add in like a 9th or like an 11th and just like add a little bit of lush reverb to it. Overall, the whole sonics are more dark, they're more like atonal synth steps, it can also be more like dissonant pads, and the whole melodic information is rather minimal. It's more about the texture and the movement than the harmony. Some effects you can add in for variation are snare rolls, also some tom fills, you can add some risers and downlifters, and also just some reversed reverb swells. Other things you can use as effects are like laser steps, some white noise sweeps, impact hits and glitches. You can also use some vocal chops, some delay throws or reverb cuts. You can also use some filtered sweeps, and it's always important to consider that the effects are part of the rhythm and not just decoration. Let's look into the song structure, and we start with an intro that's like 16 to 32 bars. Here you just have like the ambient pads and some filtered drums and maybe already tease a little bit the bass. After that comes the build up that's like 8 to 16 bars. Here you have like effect risers, you can also have a vocal lead in and still use some filtered breaks. Then the first drop hits, that's like 32 bars, here the full drum and bass hit, and you can also add some variation in the mid section as we already did in a jungle beat. After the first drop, the switch up comes, that's like 16 bars, here a new bass line comes in, or you can just add some variation to the break. After the switch up, the second drop hits, that's like again 32 bars, here you can intensify the groove a little bit or just like return to the main drop. And then after that you can again use a switch up or a break and then do a third drop, whatever you want. But after the last drop, the outro comes, that's like 16 bars, and here you can just like strip down the elements and echo out or just use the effects with a tape stop. Some things you can also add in drum and bass beats to add some more excitement or like automation with an LFO of like the filter, the delay, distortion or the reverb. Then like in jungle music, you can also use some mini switch ups where you have like every 4 to 8 bars like a little bit of a fill and then a different break just to have some motion in the whole track. And as in jungle also you can use a lot of contrast in between the sections where you just like remove the break or filter it out to have like more impact when everything hits again. That's already everything I researched about drum and bass. Yeah, you already know the drill. I'm not gonna stick to all those notes. I'm just gonna do a track in a vibe, whatever I feel like. So let's look into some more beats and then we're gonna be back for the TLDR. Alright, that's this week's track for the Unfinished Beats Volume 2, and as you can see, like last week, it's just focusing on the breaks. I have like 7 bars of the break and then an 8 bar, it's like a think break here, or last week it was the funky drummer, and then I have like other elements coming in, or like switch ups in the breaks. But yeah, the focus is more on the breaks, and yeah, in this week's track I tried to focus also a little bit more on the basses, because last week's track there were a lot of like basic basses, and here I tried to use a little bit weirder or more special ones. Yeah, I don't know, I just felt like it, and also like I just wanted to play around with the things that I have to have something finished. And I think at another point I definitely go back into this genre. It's really exciting and funny. But yeah, I think for now that's a good lesson learned, and yeah, let's recap everything in the TLDR. TLDR of drum and bass beat. Drum and bass music is in the range of 170 to 175 BPMs. You can use a lot of variation in the kick. The snare usually hits on the 2 and the 4. You can use a lot of breaks like the Amen break. The heads are high pass filtered and in 16th notes. You can use like a Reese or wobble bass. Then the harmonies overall are more liquid and dark. For that you can use the minor chords or more like atonal melodies. You can add in some pads and vocal chops. Then for some excitement you can add snare rolls, risers, downlifters, and as always you can throw some reverb and delay on it, and it's important to consider the effects in drum and bass music as part of the rhythm. That's it for this week's Hawaii Behind the Records. Next week we're gonna be back with a dub beat, so really excited for that, and until then, like, have a nice week, enjoy your day, and see you, bye!